What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. And today we are having a very special guest on the show. Coming back for round two is Mr. Nic Nielsen. Nick, welcome back to the show. So happy
Fellas,
you're here, man.
this is the happiest place on earth for CFPs to be. Honored to be with you.
As always, with me is Mr. David Fuchs, my brother from another mother. And Nick's got some new swag in the back. And I guess, Nick, we should just dive into it because, right before we hit the record button, David stopped us from, having our best conversation off camera and was like, let's get this on. But, let's pick up right there, which is I got my CFP. Where's the Greyhound bus full of the $1 million rollovers so I can get my practice started? Let's go, man. I want $100 million in assets. Let's rock.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say back in 2011, with a lot of young people taking the test, we just kind of thought, like, all right, I'm a CFP. Monday morning, there's just going to be this Greyhound bus that pulls into the parking lot, probably all millionaires, qualified, really wanting the advice and guidance expertise of a CFP.
Mm.
And the reality of it, while the CFP is incredibly important, that in and of itself is not a marketing plan, right? And I think that is the great awakening for many people. While it is probably a barrier to entry and something that people are looking for, you gotta go beyond just having the designation to get clients.
So, walk me through a little bit kind of post CFP, and I know this for myself. When I got the CFP, I was 26 years old. So I was still, even though I had interned through college, so I was there from 19 to 26, so 7 years in the industry at that point. But the first 3 or 4 of them I was interning, so really only 2 or 3 by the time I got my CFP that I was there kind of like full time. I might have even been 25. Um, and I was still pretty ignorant. The CFP really got me going. And I think it fast forwarded what I would have learned just kind of meeting clients. And I remember like my first year, 18 months, 2 years, every client was new. It was like a new situation every single time. And it wasn't until I hit that 2 year mark that you started to kind of see, oh, this client reminds me of this client. Let's do something similar. Or this client reminds me of this client. And then my practice started to evolve because I started to gravitate towards 3 or 4 groups of clients. But the CFP got me going because I really got good at retirement planning after CFP, not before, because then I really bucked down and started talking to actuaries and learning more about all the intricate details of qualified plans. My retirement planning calculation was off the hook. I built Excel models. This is pre e-money and all of those things. So I did a lot of that in Excel. But for me, it was the starting point. And that's kind of what got me in I think I'm going to go retirement planning. Retirement and investments was really my gig. And then I started to put pieces into place. But other than, I was really young and I had a couple letters after my name, it probably was the reason I got more meetings than I would have normally gotten. But other than that, it really didn't do much other than, oh, great, you're a CFP. What does that actually even mean? Now, the marks have more value now because of the marketing effort of the board and because of LinkedIn, but 2008, nobody gave a shit.
Right. Right. It was still relatively unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, to where it is today. Yeah, I would say a little bit different than what you went through. So I got mine, I believe I was 29. I was still working at the bank at that time, and I was actually working as a licensed banker. So I was really getting hit with this two-prong approach. I was getting to meet with, a minimum of 8 families a day at the bank, just people walking in. And at the same time, I was going to school for the CFP program. It was the every other Friday night, all day Saturday type of deal, full immersion.
Mm.
And then, I was, studying, reading during the week. So I was like thinking CFP all the time. And then I was doing this 8, 10, sometimes 12 meetings a day with families at the bank. The trifecta and the game changer for me was at that time, I had a branch manager who was a little bit more hands off, sweetest lady ever, Janice Lawrence, who her office was right next to mine. And she had the ability to listen into every one of my conversations. And at the time, the bank had this process. I think it was like a six step process. It was different than the CFP, but it was very it allowed you to flow through the conversation however like it naturally occurred, and you handled like the client's initial objection or why they came to the bank first. That's where you started. And then it wasn't rigid, so it allowed you to like flow through a financial planning conversation.
Hmm.
But the greatest gift was is that she would provide me feedback after every one of the sessions that I had with someone.
Yeah.
And so if I spent a half an hour with someone before the next person came in, she'd come into my office and she would like recap that with me for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Hey, you didn't talk about how they use credit. You didn't ask if they had a home equity line of credit. You didn't ask this family about if they had an umbrella insurance policy. And so having that constant feedback, that constant reinforcement, that encouragement, the nurturing, I wouldn't be where I am today without that. So I had three things happening all at once. I had great coaching in real time, which is really hard to get real time coaching. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I had this immersion of the CFP and all of the learning that comes with it. And then I was actually getting legitimate at bats of meeting with 8 families that had unique needs because it was niched. It was everyone from 18 to 88 type of
Mm-hmm.
deal.
Well, what about when what kind of pushed you over and said, all right, I mean, it sounds like a great gig, right? You got a great boss who's supporting you and kind of guiding your next moves. What kind of pushed you away from the bank and to, go off and do your own thing?
Yeah, the ultimate reality of it was is that I knew we were paying an extraordinary premium for the right to sit inside of a bank. And over time, so many of the new clients that we were getting even at the bank was from referrals from existing clients and then our own kind of network of what we were doing. And this is without any marketing. And the reality of it was is that we wanted to go independent because we wanted to control the way that we communicated with our current clients and then future clients. And we never wanted it because this was a situation. There was a lot of transition in the bank. This was 2017 for some perspective. This was like the first part of DOL, and there was a lot of like right sizing of books. We never wanted to be in a situation where we were going to have to hand over our top clients to the wealth management team, and we never wanted to be in the situation where we'd have to send quote unquote smaller clients to an 800 number. And that was happening. We were seeing that take place. We were
Hmm.
seeing the formation of those things. So we felt like independent to control the outcomes for our clients, to communicate how we wanted to communicate was really the only choice that we had.
Hmm. So was that like a tough decision though? Because I mean, one of the thing that I think freaks all of us out in this industry, myself included, was where's my next client coming from? I mean, you had a built-in mechanism of people walking in and sitting in front of 8 people. Those odds are pretty good that you probably get one or two of those people a day to work with you. You're getting 5 new clients a week. That's unheard of in our industry. And even if your payouts are lower, like, how did you weigh that decision of going, I have 40 people a week probably that built in that I get to meet with versus going out and getting to control that relationship?
Right. Yeah. And in that licensed banker role, not all of those were going to be investment opportunities, right? That could be opening a checking account for someone going to college or whatever, right? So of those conversations, maybe a quarter of them had an investment opportunity to them. So you were dealing with everything from someone lost their debit card in the ATM. So it was a vast array of circumstances there. But the reality of it is why did in the old days, why did they rob banks? Well, that's where the money's at. And and we I'll speak with me personally. I didn't know a single advisor outside of the bank program. I
Mm.
didn't know one independent advisor. I didn't know one advisor at a wirehouse. Everyone I knew was in a bank program. It was my entire network. It's all I knew. And, just in our due diligence process, we just decided that we had to take the leap of faith. And that's what it ultimately came down to. What we kind of just came up with this formula on our own. My business partner, Jeff Walters, and I, we put everybody into three categories: A, B, and C. And A was, we think this person is definitely coming with us. I can't imagine that they would ever think about life without Nick. And we assigned that an 80% probability. Went down to a B. We think we have good relationships with these people. They're not quite as warm and fuzzy. 40% probability. C, these people never want to meet with us. They might like us. They might hate us. We really don't know. 10% probability. And then we just multiplied that out based on AUM and revenue. And I was like, all right, we think based upon that ABC, this is where we'll be. If this is where we'll be, what will our life look like? Multiply that times a grid at the independent world. And we're like, oh my goodness, even if 60% of our clients don't come with us, we're still going to be financially better off. And we could pay more attention to the people that do want to come with us, who are probably raving advocates for us.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead,
go
Dave.
ahead. No, you go ahead because you're probably about to get to what I'm going to ask.
And so part of it, I think, was a little bit of fear mongering. One of the stats that we had heard by one of the big consulting groups at that time was that no bank advisor takes more than 29% of their clients and revenue with them when they go independent. And they're like, you can go if you want to, but no one's ever taken more than 29. Like, the industry average is lower, but 29 would be, amazing. And you're like, man, I can't imagine that 3 out of 4 clients would say no to this. And so we took the leap of faith, and it worked out really well. And we probably were closer to the 75% range that ended up making that transition with us. And then my friends thereafter that went after us, we taught this same process to them. And everyone kind of after us had much better success in the transition that we did. We learned things from that transition. But at the end of the day, if you're doing your good job as a financial planner, the client is more interested on the name of the back of the jersey than on the front of the jersey, right? If you're a LeBron James fan, you're going to be a fan of him if he's on the Sacramento Kings. You just don't care.
So how much,
Let's not
what
push
was,
it.
so what was the biggest difference though from going to, I mean, I think it's probably self-explanatory, but going from the bank where you were at to independent, what was the biggest difference? Was it instead of pushing bank products and doing mostly investments and other types of services to planning? Was that the biggest difference?
The reality of it is we were never really forced to push proprietary products. Now, I think the one difference in referral partners is, if somebody came to you and they needed a mortgage, you had to refer them to the internal mortgage person, right? You couldn't refer them to some independent mortgage officer. So there was some things that opened up there, but literally our entire process stayed the same. The financial planning process that we put our clients through at the bank is the same that we use today. 10 years later from what we started. Some minor tweaks here and there, like, you're either innovating or dying, right? So we've made some small innovations in our process and tightened things up, but really it was the same exact process. It's just there was 1 or 2 fewer hands in the cookie jar taking the rev.
Well, let me ask this from a product standpoint, because I know a lot of like you leave a bank channel, and I feel like this is completely leveled out over the last 20 years. When I was in the industry, broker dealers had horrible access to insurance. And I remember Smith Barney kind of like going out and creating this relationship with all these insurance companies. And we're like, we're number one broker dealer wirehouse to have these relationships, because prior to that, we could sell 2 insurance products, and then they opened it up and we could sell multiple. They hired this entire team to try to like navigate this. And you would go and, if you ever got hit up by a recruiter, the first thing that a branch manager, wherever you were intending on going, would sit down and tell you, our products are better than where you currently are. And I never felt that that was the case. I felt like every broker dealer had a version of the same exact products. A separately managed account platform, obviously access to secondary markets through NYSE and NASDAQ, a mutual fund wrap fee program, a proprietary mutual fund wrap fee program. And at the time when ETFs started becoming big in the managed products world, that, and then you go from there, they would have access to things like managed futures or structured products, things of that nature. But for the most part, 80% of the platforms were the same. Do you think that in this world now that we live in, where I feel like everybody has caught up, like, a company like Northwestern Mutual that I do quite a bit of work with, 20 years ago, their investment platform was terrible. They've caught up. They have the
Yeah.
same
Same as everybody else.
same as everybody else. Do you feel like that even plays a role in making the decision to leap? Like, if I'm an advisor thinking about leaping from one place to another, is that even a role anymore? Is that, am I missing something on that end?
I don't think so, unless you're doing something like really specific on the fringes, with private equity or venture capital or, hedge funds. There might be a broker dealer or a specific relationship that has something, on the fringe. But for the vast, 95% of the stuff, you can get at any of the broker dealers, any of the independent shops in the country at this point.
So did that play a role for you? Like, did the independents give you more access at that time, or were your product offerings pretty much the same?
It was pretty much the same. We had done a book review with a handful of places where they just kind of, they go through all of your mutual fund ETF holdings, all of your annuity holdings, your insurance holdings, and see what will map and what won't. And I mean, at kind of like the top final 5 places that we looked at, 100% of everything mapped. So that wasn't an issue, and I just don't think today that you can differentiate based on product.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you're outside, I'm going to shift a little bit. Now that you're outside of, obviously it's been a few years, but you're outside of the bank and you're outside of that referral world. I'm just curious. And I know you have a pretty big presence on LinkedIn, but how are you and your partners getting your clients primarily?
Yeah, so I would think there's like the 3 legs of the stool on getting new clients. One is clients that are raving fans, right? That refer the people that are just connectors, and they have it like hardwired in their DNA. When you do a great job for them, they want to tell other people. So that's first and foremost. There's people who are not clients but are raving fans for us, and they could be just call them COIs, but they could be wholesalers within the industry. It could be a CPA, a estate planning attorney, a bookkeeper, someone who has met me through LinkedIn, who are just raving fans and refer. And then third is just through the LinkedIn and social media content, that we've created at Know My Plan, where people have just raised their hand and say, hey, I'd be interested in having a conversation. I think I'd like to work with you guys.
How often does that convert to them being a client?
If they raise their hand and they want to, they almost always become a client, right? At that point, we're just qualifying them to make sure that they're the type of folks that we want to work with. But I mean, it's been consistent. It's 3 or 4 people just about every month from LinkedIn who ultimately become clients.
3 or 4 a month?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then what about the COIs that you mentioned? Because that's a big thing. I feel like that's one thing that if you don't have that incorporated in your practice or part of your practice management, you absolutely should. But was that something that you and your partners initiated to go out there and develop those relationships, or did those happen based on clients that you were working with and you were doing tax planning for them, and you got in touch with their CPA, or same concept with the estate planning and the estate attorney? Like, how did that happen, and how much is that incorporated into your business and into your growth as well?
So I'm probably like the worst developer of COIs in the entire country. Like I have 3 young kids. I work from home 90% of the time. I'm not going out and doing lunches with people. Like I legitimately rarely leave my house other than for one of my kids' activities, right? Whether it's basketball or taekwondo or soccer's getting ready to start. Like I'm either in my house doing Zooms with people, or I'm at one of their activities. So I'm a terrible developer of COIs. These have almost happened through divine intervention or luck, but you get on a Zoom with a CPA and a client, or an estate planning attorney and a client, and you just develop a rapport, and you send them a nice email afterwards, and hey, thank you so much for taking care of David and Joe. They're my guys. I just really appreciate you doing a good job. I love how you explained that. That was really helpful, Nick. Right. And then it's just amazing how I think the bar has been set so low in our industry of like just being like a decent person and you do what you say you're going to do type of thing, that people refer you business just because you do what you say you're going to do. I just don't have the time to go out and try to develop these relationships like a lot of people are really, really awesome at this point in my life. I just don't have the capacity to do that.
Let me ask you a question, Nick, based on that. I'm gonna give you an example of something. I was chasing this client for a very, very long time, probably about a year. I was trying to get this business. Meet with them once. No, you got to meet my wife. Sit down with the couple. We want some time to think. We're going away for a couple weeks. When we come back, meet again, and finally they give us. They give me. They say, we want you to manage our grandkids' 529 accounts. It was kind of just like, I don't know, it was just my persistence, and they just were like, oh man, this dude won't go away.
You got to give him something. Got to break him off something.
So they give me like 3 529s, and it might have been, and it was like probably 100 grand, but I was like very, very organized and diligent about the way I handled everything. It was neat. And it was the wife was the primary decision maker on it. So it was her birthday, and it popped up in my system, and I called up and I wished her a happy birthday, and pick up the phone. We had good rapport, but she just wasn't there yet. And I see, I kind of just like, hey, happy birthday to you. And she goes, I've had a financial advisor for 14 years. They have never once called and said happy birthday. Goes, send the transfer paperwork.
Yeah.
$1.8 million in assets.
Guess you're not the 529 guy anymore.
The 529 guy anymore. It was such a wild thing, but I always found that the reason why people did business with me wasn't because of performance, my strategy, my market outlook. I'm wrong probably more than I was right about the market. None of us really know what's going to happen. There are a lot of educated guesses, and even sometimes I was correct. I was wrong in the short term, but right longer term, and that's tough to explain to clients. They want all of us to have a crystal ball and tell them what's going to happen next. I always found that by being neat, by being organized, by being responsible, you created trust, and trust created a raving fan more so than anything else. Clearly you're having success. Clearly if you're breaking your client book into raving fans, they clearly trust you. How are you developing that trust with clients? And then how are you keeping it? Because we've had a rough couple of years in the market. I'm sure client accounts have gone down. Obviously, we've had a great, first 7 months of this year, but with the U.S. getting downgraded, who knows what happens in the back half of this year? Could be a tumultuous back end of a year. We don't know. How are you keeping that trust regardless of asset performance?
It's a great question. And first of all, we never, and might sound crazy to most, but we never talk about investment performance. Like we don't do it. It's not part of the process. We talk about the things that we can control, and having peace with things that we can't control. And a large part of the financial planning process, if you want to have great long-term success, you have to get real comfortable with being wrong, right? We know that we're going to make assumptions that are not going to be right. We're going to be off about rates of return, inflation, when we're going to get promotions, when we're going to receive an inheritance, exactly how much college is going to cost. We're going to be wrong on all those things. Like, you're never going to nail one of them, let alone all of them. And we're just trying to zero it in. We're just trying to get closer, and we're focusing more on progress than we are on the perfection of trying to get things right. We're trying, we're not necessarily trying to land a plane in Orlando. We're just trying to get to Florida. We're trying to, hey, we're getting closer. Let's just get this thing to Florida. We'll get it to Orlando once we're in Florida. So you're never going to be exact. And I think the quicker that you have comfort in that it's not an exact process, and it's a trial of trying to be less wrong, I think that provides some comfort. And I think a large part of our success really comes from the one-page plan that we provide all of the clients that we guide. We call it our Financial Fortress Blueprint. And a lot of times it's really just focusing on the 2 to 3 next steps that we want someone to really hone in on and get done between now and the next time that we meet. I think so many people get lost in these 130-page financial plans and Monte Carlo simulations and all these what if scenarios that they really don't understand, like, what's next? What do I need to do? How do I need to do that? Am I going to do that? Is the advisor going to do that? So we have very clear and concise next steps, which I think, to your initial question, I think that's what builds trust. There's no ambiguity there. Nick's going to send an email. It's going to introduce you to a couple of different estate planners. Connect with them, get it done. And
So
I think there's a compounding effect.
Yeah.
That happens when you start getting things done. Clients love wins. Right?
Yeah.
They love to win. They love getting stuff done.
Right.
But the problem is the way that most financial planning advice is delivered, they never really make any meaningful progress towards getting stuff done. They're just left with a big binder, and they don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think every single person from an online site or something alike, it's a lot of crap to deal with. And it feels like I'm just spinning my wheels most of the time, trying to figure out what's the next step. How do you guys whittle it down to one page? Like, there's a lot of information. Like, how are you guys creating that simplicity for your clients and saying, hey, we're going to take your entire financial picture, which for a lot of people is complicated. There's multiple moving parts, there's family members, there's children, there's a lot going on. How do you guys whittle it down? Are you guys saying, let's just focus on the next 12 months, on the next 5 years? Like, what are you guys doing that you're able to consolidate it and get those wins? Because it's great, that you're able to do that. And I think for all of us, anybody that helps me knock things off of my to-do list and does it in a better way than I can, take my money. I don't care. Take my money. I don't care if it's somebody who's cleaning my house or washing my car or helping me pick my mutual funds or my finances. How are you guys getting it so concise?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a very collaborative process where we're talking back and forth. And the phrase that we use often is that your dreams determine your plan determines your portfolio. The portfolio is nothing more than the mechanism that ultimately funds the plan. And everything
he's got the best taglines.
Everything just starts with that hierarchy, right? We're just focused on the dreams. Like, what are we trying to get done? And I work with this couple, Jack and Lissa, and Lissa does all the talking. She's very outgoing. She's bubbly. She's like the perfect person that would be like a relationship manager. She's awesome. And Jack is super cool, but he's laid back and he doesn't talk a lot. And we're just like, all right, we got all this money. Like, what are we saving for? Like, what's important to you guys? Like, if you had to think about your financial dreams, how would you just verbalize it? And Jack just pops up, and Jack never talks. And he was like, I know exactly what financial independence looks like for me. I'm going to live in the mountains. I'm going to eat Indian food every day. I'm going to play guitar and I'm going to watch the NHL. And like that was like a vision board in 15 seconds for Jack. Like he had it all planned out, but he never told anybody before.
Mm.
But when you can kind of figure out like what's important to somebody, whether it's, hey, I don't want to be a burden to my children, I want to make sure that I'm on track. A lot of times the next steps to a financial planner are very clear. They may not be very clear to the outside person as the client. They might be really confused about what to do next. But a lot of times to the financial planner, to the true practitioner, it's pretty clear. And so 2, 3, maybe 4 things. All right. You need to increase your umbrella insurance. If something crazy happens, because crazy things happen, this could jeopardize your family's financial future. Right. Do you need me to be on a call with you with your property and casualty agent? Is this something you can do alone? Well, you know what, Nick? Honestly, I wouldn't even know the right questions to ask. Would you mind doing it together? All right, perfect. Let's schedule a 15-minute Zoom with your guy. Get it done, right? So we're scheduling things out. A lot of these things are micro tasks, right? Increasing your umbrella insurance from $1 million to $3 million could be as simple as an email. It's probably no more than a 15-minute conversation. And most of the time, there's not even paperwork involved. But they don't know what to ask. They get uncomfortable. So I just hop on a 15-minute little micro task Zoom call with somebody or a phone call, and it's done. And they feel like $1 million because that's lifted off their shoulders.
And it is a big deal.
And it is, and that's also where you're obviously, you and your partners have a very planning service with investments oriented business. And that's where, you add so much more value, and you kind of give yourself some insurance when the markets go down, because in my short tenure and just from what I've heard from people, if you go based off investments, when the market tanks, you are very, very liable to get fired. But, I've a lot of advisors in my office that do mostly planning. And when they have meetings with their clients and I'm in on these meetings, we rarely even touch on the investment part. And that's where the client is like, for example, that call that you just mentioned with the insurance policy, and I'm sure you do other stuff for them outside of investments as well. That's where they're like, that's what we are paying Nick for, and his team.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the investment guy, because that's a transaction, right?
Well,
Like I think in this business, you have to decide early on: are you the investment guy? And if you're the investment guy, you just got to own it.
Yeah.
Right. And whatever, that's fine. You can be the investment guy, but are you going to be the financial planner?
Right.
But you can't be both. Clients only see you as one or the other. They'll never see you as both.
Well, but if you're the investment guy, you're the investment guy. But if you're the planning guy, you can be the planning guy and also know about investments and be able to speak about them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't like to get too granular about the investments. We want to own the best companies in America and the world. What we believe the best way to get close to the full long-term return of the market is to own the market and to not sell when things go down, right? So we have to have a game plan for that. How do we do that, right? We want to make sure that we have a fully funded emergency fund. We want to make sure that we have, any major purchases that we have coming up in the next 2 to 3 years also set aside in cash. If we need income from our portfolio, we set aside 5 years worth of portfolio income needs in safe short-term bonds. And, we hope we don't have to use that money that we've set aside in short, safe term bonds. But that's our break glass in case of emergency money for when the stock market ultimately goes down, because we all know the message that we preach is that the returns of the market from day to day, month to month, year to year are random. But over long periods of time, it's going to follow corporate earnings pretty well. So if we believe in capitalism, if we believe that companies are going to continue to steward their capital towards the most profitable endeavors, I certainly wouldn't want to bet against capitalism or innovation.
You're using big words, baby. I like this.
I'm just like ripping. That's like my whole investment policy statement right there.
That is like this guy could work at a county fair or he could be inside of the Library of Congress, man. He uses words like steward. Look at that. He's just quick with it too. I mean,
Well, I mean, I have a little Joe Nissom bingo card going on here, and I had Stewart on the card, so I gotta check that box.
yeah.
Nick, just talking about planning and all that, I'm curious. What do you would you say like your team has like a primary focus or like a niche? And if so, what is it? And if not, and you kind of just do general planning with everything, is there like one specific planning item that you either enjoy or do the most? Tax planning, retirement and income planning, estate planning, like I just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so our kind of sweet spot is going to be executives, 35 to 50, with families. So the people that we serve generally have 3 kids, drive a minivan, have a golden doodle. Like
Me
that's
too.
their niche.
They
Income
one step away from that.
250 and above.
I have like one of those three.
Yeah, you're almost there. You're almost
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we'll allow them to substitute a large SUV for the minivan, but our Australian Shepherd for the Golden Doodle. But that's kind of the world. Golden Retrievers also allowed. But that's where we're at.
And you're
That's our
doing what for
people.
them?
It,
Like
it,
like
it is.
what planning part? Tax planning.
We do it all. We do it all, right? We're putting we're putting their tax return in Holistic Plan, finding
That's what we use.
finding gaps, trying to get to more tax efficient investments, trying to make
Yeah.
sure they have appropriate amounts of life insurance and disability insurance, which they don't, trying to make sure they have their estate planning documents done, which they don't, right? So those are the things that we're trying to check off the box.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick, and we're gonna have to wrap it up in the next few minutes here, but we kind of, anytime that somebody comes in and sees me as a student, it's like I have a checklist of here's what we need for a successful exam, right? If you're going to take an exam, here's a successful studier. And there's basic, really fundamental things that everybody has to do. Now, everybody's going to have kind of their own version of it, but it doesn't excuse them from doing it. Everybody still has to know vocabulary. They still need to work through the applicative process of that vocabulary, then apply to 2 and 3 step problems. They still have to have fundamental math. And it never ceases to amaze me that how anytime that somebody's coming in with an issue, it really kind of goes back to their fundamentals. What are some of those fundamentals that you see that like we kind of know that everybody comes in without DI. Everybody comes in underinsured. Everybody comes in not contributing to retirement accounts in a suffice manner. What are some of those things that you see with that 35 to 50, especially because that's my demographic, right? Like what are people in my age group doing that everybody's coming in under on?
Yeah, so I'm going to quote the master, Nick Murray, here once again. He would say that there's 6 main questions that every family has to answer. Number 1, what happens if I die prematurely? What happens if I get hurt and can't work? How do I fund my children's education? How do I fund my own retirement? What happens if I need care later in life, right? How do I pass these monies to my children, to my favorite charities without giving the IRS a substantial tip due to lack of planning? So those are the 6 questions that I think are the core questions. And there are offshoots of those, just like a big one that we deal a lot with is equity compensation. I would say most of the people get like 80% of the way there on most of these topics on their own, right? Everybody can get a B on their own, maybe a B plus, right? A lot of times, all I'm trying to do is take someone from a B plus to an A, right? I'm finishing the last 20% that they haven't been able to wrap their mind around how it all fits together. They have all of the pieces to the puzzle. These are smart, well-educated, high-earning alphas. They just don't understand how it all works together because they don't do it 40 hours a week. like we do it. We've had the luxury of doing this hundreds of times.
Hmm.
They're doing this one time. So I have the law of large numbers on my side because I've seen this all before. So we're
Hmm.
just trying to take the A to the A plus, the B to the A. That's what we're trying to do.
That's so. Give me an example of what that means in practice. Like, your typical client coming in, they work in pharma sales, they're making $500,000 as a couple, they're purchasing homes, they're funding education. What does that put together piece look like?
Well, first of all, it's all going to be on a one-page plan, and we're going to outline everything that needs to happen that either we're going to do or they need to do, every year between now and when we next meet. With the person that you're just describing there, I mean, that's who we work with. And a lot of it in that world, in the equity compensated world, is you have to not only walk them through, you have to hold their hand through some of these equity compensation issues. If not, they enter this wonderful world that you know all so well about called AMT, the alternative minimum tax, where it is neither alternative or minimum, it's mandatory and maximum. And the ripple effects of entering AMT linger for years.
Yeah.
Right? You mess up 1 year's return by exercising a bunch of ISOs. The ripple effect for that is a long time. And I always tell these people, I'm like, listen, friends don't let friends exercise alone, right? You don't exercise options alone. Like that's a recipe for disaster. So, and that person that you just described, it's getting real granular on making a plan for that equity compensation and how that's going to fund everything else that they want to do that's on that dream or vision board that they want to do.
Do you typically like stage that out over several years? Because I actually had this happen with a buddy of mine. He's, I've known him since we were sixth grade, and he's probably my oldest friend. And he would call me up. He's like, "Hey man, they were buying a house." And he's like, "I'm going to exercise a bunch of my options." I was like, "Do you run it through your accountant before you do it?" He's like, "Why?" I was like, "Because if you exercise that, you're going to be subject to AMT." He's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Go talk to your accountant, please."
Right. Please talk
Like,
to someone. Friends don't let friends exercise alone.
it's like, I don't want to get involved in the numbers and so on, but go and talk to them before you do it because you may be putting yourself in a real precarious position.
So
And
the greatest I think little anecdote that has helped some people, because other than the long-term care type of scenarios, the really horrific stuff that I've seen over the last 20 years has all been concentrated equity. I mean, nobody gets killed in a broadly diversified buy and hold portfolio, no matter how bad it is.
over time.
You pick the worst mutual funds, but you buy and hold them, you're not going to get killed. You mess up an equity compensation scenario, it could be life-changing, right? $6 million can go to zero like that. So the way that I stage it is, if you bought a Powerball ticket today and you won the Powerball, would you take the money because it's life-changing and you can fund all the other dreams that you want to do? Or would you say, you know what, Mr. Powerball, I want to redeem this Powerball ticket for more Powerball tickets, right? When you don't sell once you've had that massive win, you are essentially saying, I want to continue exchanging this big win that I know I have locked in for additional lotto tickets in the future. So that has helped some people get away from the concentrated equity portfolio, which is the biggest risk that many equity compensated people face.
Mm-hmm.
I had an advisor that I worked with, and he would always, and his view on stock compensation plans was, I don't want to tie any more money to the place that cuts my paycheck.
Right.
And then that stayed with me. I mean, he said that to me in like 2004, like it's 20 years later, and I still remember that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is the greatest place ever. He's like, Joe, they cut your paycheck already. You get stock, do something with it. Just don't let it, protect it, sell it, but just don't sit on it because you're tying too much into one place.
Even the singular best companies that we can all think of, the Nvidias, the Apples, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Facebooks. These are the best and biggest companies in the world. They have drawdown periods all the time of more than 60%. The average person is not equipped to handle a 60 to 80% drawdown, which can absolutely happen with the best and well-capitalized companies, let alone, small cap pharma, biotech,
Yeah.
type companies.
Yeah. And I think it's, you got to temper that greed button with your clients.
Mhm.
It could be more. What if the stock doubles? I'm leaving that money on the table. How do you
Exactly.
temper that? Because, and we got to go because we got like 2 minutes, but how do you temper that greed button that people are dealing with?
It's never easy. And a lot of times you hope that they're married, and it's usually the female who is the voice of reason.
Yeah.
And and I think there's plenty of studies that show that females make better long-term investors than males. Females that I've experienced tend to be more rational investors. And in a lot of these scenarios, when you've won the game, you stop playing the game. You don't have to sell everything. Keep 10%, keep 20%. Make sure
Right.
you funded everything else that you want in your plan. If you want to keep your company stock above and beyond that, once everything else is funded, so be it. But take some chips off the table when it's appropriate.
Mhm.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that was, and the thing is like the fear and greed that you deal with as an advisor is never the way that you think it's going to happen, right? Because clients will bring really compelling ideas, and you're sitting there and you have to kind of unpack it, and it's tricky sometimes. It's like, well, this is the company that built my entire wealth. My entire vision board is funded by this company.
Right.
I stop now.
Right. And I always tell people too, like, you love this company because you've heard everything that they've had to say for the last 8 years.
Hmm.
Are you listening to 15 to 20 conference calls every quarter from companies like Hershey and Starbucks and McCormick and Home Depot? If you listen to 15 to 20 quarterly conference calls of all these companies, you might understand that there's a lot of other great companies in America and the world besides just the one that you happen to work for.
Yeah.
You're just
Mhm.
so inundated because that's all you see.
Yeah, but you're also your risk changes, right? Like if you have $100,000 in options or equity, you have $100,000 of risk. That balloons to $1 million. You don't have $100,000 of risk anymore. Now you have $1 million,
Millions.
and you
Yeah.
need to treat it differently. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people forget is that they're anchored in the past of what it was versus what it is now, and then now kind of getting a little, rose colored glasses on and thinking, hey, if this happens again, it's 10 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that becomes that's a very hard, these urges are very hard to temper. And I think it's harder now as an advisor because our world has become so technologically inclined that we're so used to getting what we want when we want it. I could order a pizza sitting in bed on a Sunday morning and going, oh, it's noon. I haven't gotten out of bed. Let me get a pizza, and it's there in 20 minutes.
Right. Instant gratification.
Right. And it's hard to temper back those emotions because I want it and I want it now. And I don't want to leave this on the table is very, very, very hard.
Everyone wants 100% of the upside with no downside.
Exactly.
The
Also,
Holy Grail.
yeah, right. And everybody's a long-term investor when short-term results are good.
Exactly.
So, Nick, thank you so much for being on. Incredibly insightful. So, for all of you guys who are now at the latter stages of prepping for CFP, or you already have your CFP, Nick is an incredible example. I mean, he's really his career is 10 years in, Nick, now.
Yeah, 12. I got the CFP in 11.
And kind of flowering better than probably what it was years ago, because and this is one of the best things to see a practice that's actually like in what I like to call the flow state. You guys have really found your niche. You're really good at it. You know exactly who you're going after, but more importantly, you know what you're not doing and what you guys can't do. And I think that's an important part of after you get your CFP, your ego tends to balloon quite a bit. And you're like, I can do anything. And then, you know,
I refer stuff to other advisors all the time.
yeah. And I think, Nick has really found a great place, a great example of what happens post CFP when you really kind of start putting that stuff to use and not thinking that your letters are an instant me clients type of attitude. And Nick, you're a great example of it. Thank you for being with
Yep.
us, and thank you for sharing your insight and what's going on in your practice. This is absolutely awesome. So if you are a new advisor, if you're even a couple years in, getting to see somebody with a bit more experience that's really honed in on their craft, this is invaluable information. This information here is worth millions of dollars in your career. And if you think that I'm kind of ballooning that up, I'm not. There is little pieces of advice that I got from advisors over the years that literally was life-changing advice from a revenue and from also, an emotional standpoint. So take the information, use it in your practice. And Nick, we'd love to have you on again. As always, man, you were great.
Yep.
Dude, I'm always here for you guys. If anyone's listening to this who works with you guys, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. But guys, keep up the awesome work. You're the best of the best, and appreciate everything you guys do.
And are
Awesome.
you
Thank you.
expanding, Nick?
What was that?
Are you expanding?
Yeah, we recently just added on a new advisor. The world told us that at our growth rate, we needed more help, and so we got a cool guy, Will Miller, who joined the team.
Congrats, man. That's big. That's a big step.
First of August. So he's joined us as a lead advisor, and he's studying for his CFP right now. So we're big believers in lifelong learners.
Good man. Good man. Well, congratulations. Amazing. Thank you, Nick, and we will see you very soon.
Got it. Take care,
Take
guys.
care.